Okay, a very good evening to everyone. I, Prachi Pandey, on behalf of our entire team of VR SAT, welcome you to our event of today, which is a panel discussion on cybersecurity. VR SAT is a recently formed personal social responsibility initiative of a few lawyers. We at SAT aim to help the various organizations, governmental as well as non-governmental units, by acting as a medium of link and connecting them with all the people and everyone in distress available through various statutory and governmental schemes and compliances through a well-connected channel of legal service authorities. Today's discussion is on cybersecurity. The importance of cybersecurity is on the rise. Fundamentally, our society is more technologically reliant than ever before, and there's no sign that this trend will slow. Also, all businesses, regardless of their size and the area they cover, they all need cybersecurity today, and they must all ensure that every staff understand the importance of cybersecurity, the threat that are attached to it, and how to mitigate them. This should also include regular training and a framework to work with to that aims to reduce the risk of data leaks or data breaches. Cybersecurity is important because it encompasses everything that pertains to protecting our sensitive data, personal identifiable information, protected health information, personal information, intellectual property, data, and governmental and industry information system. With this, we will commence the session for today and invite everyone. First and foremost, I would invite Commander Prasanna ma'am to inaugurate the ceremony. And it would be very good if we could have a few words from you, ma'am.
Good evening, one and all present over here. Respected members of Distress Management Council, Distress Management team, and all the members from DMCI and members of SAT. I'm extremely glad to be part of this organization, and which actually helps our society to understand and give more awareness amongst the youngsters and parents towards the most happening issue, which we all are facing across the world. And thanks for Advocate Deepak Prakash and Dr. Vinod Menon to give us an opportunity to listen to the wonderful panelists. And I won't be I won't be taking much of your time. And I welcome all the participants and the panelists to listen to this wonderful program, which will be of very informative and more or less like it will be an eye-opening session for all of us, as we have very limited knowledge and awareness towards this topic, as I understand. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now we invite Professor N. Vinod Chandra Menon, sir, who is the Chief Mentor of VR SAT. Professor Menon is a Senior Professor and Head of School, Compassion, Peace, Humanitarian Action and Disaster Risk Management, CPHT, Faculty of Social Innovation, Partnership and Co-Creation, SIPC. He's also a founder member of National Disaster Management Agency under the Government of India. We request you, sir, to kindly say a few words.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prachi. I'm very grateful to the organization SAT, VR SAT, to basically organize an event like this on cybersecurity. And we have got 4 distinguished panelists who will be speaking to the delegates who are participating and attending to this. We will also be taking questions. And I'm sure that for those of you, who are already aware of the work of people like Mr. Rakshit Tandon, Professor Jagmar, and also Ms. Dhanya Menon, and Dr. Manoj Kumar Sharma, who's a professor of clinical psychology. I'm sure that all of you who are already exposed to their work would be knowing about them, and I'm sure they will get introduced properly by, Prachi, in terms of, familiarizing you with their background. All of them have done some outstanding work, and I have actually been, personally very closely associated with Professor Jaykumar in NIMHANS, even during the tsunami days. Actually, we worked very closely, and even in many disasters, we have been working very closely in the past. And with Mr. Rakshit Tandon, I have participated in a conference in a training program where, the familiarization of people, of students and principals of schools to issues related to the cybersecurity, especially by people confusing or, people keeping their identity, providing fake identities and then setting up, Facebook IDs, and then, trying to establish friendships with students. Has also been there. There has also been cyber frauds which have been happening and so on. So Mr. Rakshit Tandon is one person who is actually an expert in these areas. I'm sure that this session will be extremely informative, and grateful to Commander Prasanna, who is also a person who is very distinguished by her own professional standing, and grateful to her for having delivered the opening remarks. Thank you very much. Look forward to a very interesting presentation from the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. We also invite Dr. Reshmi Bhaskaran ma'am, who is a key executive member of the team We Are Saath. Dr. Reshmi Bhaskaran ma'am is a trained applied economist specialized in policy research, knowledge management, and strategy development. She is an expert in policy research and advocacy, M&E, documentation, strategy, and brand development. I also request Reshmi ma'am to say a few words.
I think Prachi, we can move ahead. She's not there in the meeting. I think she's not there.
Okay, I thank you, Menon sir, for your words again. With this, we proceed forward and invite our first panelist. Our first panelist, Dhanya Menon ma'am. Dhanya Menon completed her diploma in cybercrime from Asian School of Cyber Law located at Pune. Soon after completing her diploma course, she joined as a visiting faculty for Asian School of Cyber Law. Dhanya Menon also completed her postgraduate diploma in cybercrime from ICFAI and a cybercrime investigation course from Asian School of Cyber Law. She's also an awardee of the First Women Achievers Award for being the first women cybercrime investigator in 2018. I now invite Dhanya Menon ma'am to speak on cybercrime and its investigation.
Hi all, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Commander Prasanna, also for introducing me to this group called DMC. And thanks for inviting me for this discussion also. Basically, cybercrime investigation, whatever I have been dealt with last 16 years. This is my 17th year in this industry. But in the last 16 years, it has been more of a learning platform than a kind of every experience, every issue that has come to me has been a new learning experience, actually. And before me getting into this field of cybercrime investigation or cybercrimes as such, I had no clue world could be this bad. And I'm being very frank, and from the bottom of my heart, the world could be so bad. I never realized it. Having a considerable middle class family with relatively good comforts given by the parents. I mean, I was not exposed to any kind of issues that people or children by and large go and face. There are two streams basically three streams as we call it to cybercrime investigation or cybercrimes. One is the individual side. The next is organizational crime.
Kanika, please mute everybody. Kanika, please mute everybody except the speaker.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. So I thought somebody was trying to ask me something. Okay. Basically, I was talking about three streams of cybercrime that we have seen till now. One is the government level, the second is the organizational level, and the third is the individual level. Now, see, all three are important, or all three have their own style of impacts to our everyday lives. Now, see, beyond 2000, from the year 2000 onwards, if you're looking at terrorist activities, most of them have some kind of a role to play on the cyberspace. So, and that is when you call it a cybercrime against governments. We are today talking about cyber wars, where every country is, equipping themselves to be ready in case there is a war waged, how to go about with it. Second is to protect the information, the infrastructure of the government infrastructure or the nation's infrastructure, because everything today is on the cyberspace. So these are the things that comes under the government cyber crimes related to the government side. Then you have the organizational crimes. Organizational crimes is when, again, there are two areas to it, wherein the crimes are conducted in an organized manner, is also called as organized or organizational crimes. But again, there are where the crimes are impacting the organizations. That's also called as the organizational crimes. When you're talking about organizational crimes, the prime thing or the asset that we are talking about will be data. Data is the key, is the only key that we'll be talking about, because that is something which is going to be much, much more valuable than anything else in the coming years. Of course, from the last few years itself, we have seen that the value of data, how it has increased. So data is something which every organization will have to think about how to protect from their own data not being lost, how they can procure data, third-party data they're dealing with, and so on and so forth. And basically, organizational crimes is what deals with a lot of finances, money, basically, and that is something which brings in revenue to my organization in Thrissur also, because organizational crimes, whenever we are asked to do things or formulate policies or to check up whether their data is secure or not, we are paid. In case there is an accident and they've lost their data, then also we are paid to understand what has happened and how it has happened. So the second issue comes far and more than the prevention. Unfortunately, none of we talk of we don't talk of prevention as much as it should be talked about. That's what I felt being in this industry. Then last and the third one would be the crimes against individuals. Number of issues that we as an organization, I have an NGO also back in Thrissur. The number of organizations, if you see, are by and large very, very high when you talk about individual crimes. That is crimes against human beings, you know, your identity, your privacy, somebody stalking you, to somebody blackmailing you, even murders. We have seen issues that things have got as bad as murder also. From stalking. Stalking is the simplest thing that we see today, but probably the impact of stalking is much larger than a murder, because if there is a murder, we're talking about one person who's dying once, it is over. At least you can say it is over with that thing. But in stalking, no, it's a daily torture which every human being goes through. And age group of files with my NGO is from 5 to 75 actually. On the individual crime category, I have both the files of perpetrators, I have the files of victims, I have the files of people who do not know where they are actually, that they are not sure, they're unsure whether they have done a crime or they've been part of being victimized. So that's something which, there are a lot of files in that case also in my NGO. So these are the things that we normally get to see every day. And cases, by and large, I would say I had about 8 cases when I started my career in a month, which is around 200 cases per week now on the individual platform, because on the NGO sector, we deal with only Indian files. Dominantly South Indian is what we get, because of the proximity that can me reach out to my office, because we are in Thrissur. So these are the things that we have dealt with in my organization. Now I'd definitely like to take some questions so that I know which direction to move on. Well, I see a lot of students in this group, a lot of professionals in this group. So I'm really not sure about which of the angle I should stress on.
Hello.
Yes.
Dr. Thrissur, know about your impeccable record in terms of as a crime investigator, you know, the kind of recognition which you have received, including the President's Award and so on. You know, because of the brief introduction, they have not been able to really share about your profile. But I would request, you know, one of the organizing team members to kindly also share Dr. Dhanya Menon's profile in the background, please. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, sir, we'll share.
Oh, thank you so much. It's, no, basically, it's just for my understanding whether I should be talking more about the individual issues, I mean, the social issues that we see on a daily basis, which impacts the woman and child, most of all children, I would say.
Yeah, actually, the kind of the background of the specialists in the panel, we hope that most of the issues will get covered, from the social aspects, and also from the children and the school children and youth will get addressed. From the crime aspect, because of cyber frauds and other things, because now a lot of UPI payments are being made, including Google Pay and very many other formats. Including online transactions which are actually taking place. Maybe you could address some of those things from the criminal investigation point of view of what kind of safety we need to have in terms of online transactions.
Sure. See, first of all, what I would say is that online transactions have increased beyond. I mean, this post-COVID period definitely. Online transactions have increased. Most of us are forced to be like, I used to be one person who used to keep on telling the children that, stay away from digital gadget, use it only for your academics, or others, keep away from your, and limit your time on your digital spaces, something which I used to forget. But now since the COVID has come in, we are forcing our children to be on the digital for most of their time. But I still will, as far as children are concerned, keep the digital exposure limited, the screen time limited, because screen time itself has an addiction. Once you're addicted to it, there is very little recourse we can all think about. In 2009 and all, when we were talking about internet de-addiction centers in India, people were laughing at us. But 2009, China saw the first de-addiction center. 2014, US saw the de-addiction center. 2018, Kerala, my little state Kerala, saw the first formal de-addiction center. So we are all going to a situation where substance addiction or alcohol addiction, as we call it, or probably drug addiction, will be minimal when you compare to the digital addiction. Most of our brains are rewired because of this digital space and the addiction that it causes. So definitely, and this COVID period has definitely accelerated this entire process also. Online transactions being large in number, the time that you spend being very high on this digital space, the number of issues or the types of issues largely haven't changed for me, basically. The types of cases that I've seen in my career and during the COVID times, nothing has changed for me. The number of cases have changed, like, banking, financial transactions, defrauding you by using phishing. Apps itself, people are calling back customers. See, the latest, the most number of cases that actually came to me that somebody tried calling up, Googling up their bank's customer care number. They got a number on the Google. They call on that number. The number is not answered. After some time, there's a call back from another number, say, asking, you called the customer care number of so-and-so's bank. What is it? How can we help you? So this person tells, okay, this is what I want. I was trying to update my card, or I was trying to transfer 200 rupees to my daughter. I was trying to recharge my phone, etc. Something. So they say, okay, the server is down, because of which you will not be able to complete the transaction, but I will complete the transaction for you. Please download this particular app. I can name that app also. It is called AnyDesk. It's actually a screen sharing app, like to have your team viewer, and AnyDesk is basically a team screen sharing app. So they ask you to download that app by sending a link, which the customer or the people there actually download, and then they start transacting through that app, because once you download that app, the other person has a complete access on your phone. They can simply copy all your data, phone book, your memory card, your gallery, everything onto their gadget in just matter of minutes. And those minutes, they can actually keep you talking on the phone with you. And then during the course, we have also found that such calls extend wherein they ask for the OTP being sent, because they initiate a transaction from their end or from the phone using the share app. And they initiate a financial transaction, you get an OTP, and they say, okay, you have to give us the OTP, only then we can complete your transaction. So there are people who have lost from 1,200 rupees to nearly 4,85,000. That is the highest that I've got during this COVID period. No, I have a case which has come yesterday, which I've not looked into the details, but looks similar to me, where a student has lost 16 lakhs. That amount he had kept it aside for his admission charges. So that 16 lakhs he has lost because he has shared the OTP over a period of time. Over 1 week, he has shared the OTP consecutively to these phishing callers. So these numbers have increased. And now if you look at children being engaged in cyber crimes or getting involved in it, fake ID, creation of fake IDs or creating multiple profiles, social media profiles, they're rampant. Children don't know where to start, where to stop. And because they're addicted with this particular screen time, they develop a confidence level with the screen because of which they actually click or videograph themselves in vulnerable styles, and they have no problem sending it to people because they say this person is my Instagram friend. Now that friend, who is that friend, also the child will have no idea about. But nothing stops these children from sharing such intimate pictures or videos with these people. So I've seen both the and such kind of social media penetration, social media attacks which happens against children can lead them to basically end up in kind of a drug abuse or even sexual abuse, or probably try and kill themselves. That's something which you have seen. Again, the numbers have risen during this COVID period. If you actually see, I think the rise is by around 16% or something during the COVID period for youngsters to commit suicide because of the social media. So it's not a nice thing that I get to see every day. I get only to see this negative side of the space. Yeah, I would like to take some questions now. I think I've broadly, quickly covered because I think I was given 15 minutes time. So I just,
right. Thank you.
The best of my ability.
Thank you very much. I think questions are coming up in the chat box. So, we will actually come back to you after the other presentations are over. And over to you, Prachi.
Sir, I would like to kindly request you, because this meeting came to me in a very short notice. I had actually taken up a meeting at 4:30 to 6:30.
Okay.
So I will.
Okay, you would need to leave. Okay, we'll continue with that. Don't worry, it's okay. These are all exigencies which keep coming up. During emergency situations. We understand that. Thank you very much. We will continue. So anybody who has
one question, one question is why cybercrime police take so much time. See, police is police. Our legal system is the same. We cannot change it overnight. Now, why does the police take such a long time to investigate on a process? First thing is that even reporting happens quite late. Honestly speaking, 99% of the files that come to me, they don't get reported. And even if it gets reported, mostly the jurisdictional issue falls as a challenge because suppose I'm going and giving a complaint in Cochin, the cyber station in Cochin. But the case would have, the perpetrator or the criminal would be sitting somewhere in North India. So definitely the investigation jurisdiction also changes. So it definitely takes a lot of time. There has to be certain changes. There has to be certain rules and a set of rules and regulations in place, certain practices in place so that things speed up. I do agree.
Yeah. May I request Advocate Kanika to please take over?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And invite the next speaker by just introducing the.
Yes, thank you so much, ma'am, for your presence, and thank you so much for being there on such a short notice. And ma'am, we'll just get back to you with some questions if people have, and then we can just revert them through the email ID.
I have shared my phone number and email ID. So in case you have something, just send me all the questions together. I'll answer it together and send it back to you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was a great pleasure having you.
Thank you. It was nice. It was a pleasure meeting all of you all. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you. Prachi, you can invite another.
Thank you, Dhanya madam, for coming. Thank you very much.
Prachi, are you there?
I think there was a message that Prachi may also need to leave. Is that true?
I think she had some network issues.
Okay. Then why don't you just take over?
Okay, I think now okay. So after ma'am, yes. Okay. So I would like to invite Dr. Manoj Kumar Sharma sir, who is a professor of clinical psychology in NIMHANS, Bangalore, Karnataka, credited to start first tech de-addiction clinic in India. He called that clinic that is service for healthy use of technology. It received attention of national and international media, worked exclusively in the area of assessment and intervention for technology and behavioral addiction. He had published 90 plus research paper in technology and behavioral addiction. Sir, it is our pleasure to have you here as a panelist, and we're very looking forward on the topic, and also that our volunteers can get some of the knowledge and some of the blessings from you.
Thank you for inviting me, and very good evening to all the participants also. And I would start because my work mainly in the area of technology overuse and its impact, which include cyber related issues also. So first we would check for why technology use is a concern for us. So I would say that the main variables which affects excessive use of technology, first is accessibility, because 24 into 7 accessibility is there. When I started my work in this area, I used to ask question like how much money do you spend per month? But now the question has changed to how many GB do you use per day? So much change has happened over the last 10 years. So that's mean the accessibility has increased. And since it's accessibility means it can be easily accessed on your smartphone and all, so it also gives you anonymity. You can do XYZ activity very anonymously, like sometimes there is a complaint comes, like even though they are in some sessions and all, but suddenly some message has other things has come. So anonymity also enhance one's predisposition to use cyberspace in a deviant way, because anonymity is also linked with the freedom, because if you allow anybody in the offline environment also that do as freely as you want. In the psychology, some of the projective tests, when we say that whatever questions, whatever, after seeing those cards, if you see anything on your mind, please speak. So people come out with very different kind of responses. So once you give anonymity and freedom, people do use the facilities or do use the cyberspace in a very different way. And sometimes because they have psychological issues or may have certain personalities, predispositions, which predispose them to use cyberspace in a risky way. So that's become the second criteria. Third is because anonymity and freedom is there, so it also allows you the ability for disinhibition. Disinhibition we see in substance use also, because sometimes people use substances to disinhibit themselves because they feel they can't express themselves in an offline, in a controlled manner, but after taking substance they feel very open and they feel free to open up themselves. The same way, cyberspace also provides the opportunity for disinhibition, which is also linked with the deviant use of cyberspace. So all these three characteristics, if it is there and the person has other personality issues like novelty seeking, person by nature wants to have a novelty, so he or she will like to explore XYZ modality of cyberspace also. Second is they want to have more experience seeking, like sometimes there is a peer group pressure, because sometimes bullying happens or sometimes trolling happens, and sometimes it is not an individual behavior. Sometimes he or she feel that my other friends are also doing it. And some of the newspaper reports came in the media also about adolescents indulgence in various deviant cyber use. So it's not one adolescent, it's like a group of adolescents who are working together, and there is a peer pressure to engage in this kind of behavior also. So these kind of issues also because of novelty, because of experience seeking, and sometimes boredom is also another reason, because of by nature we are very feel bored. Boredom is a normal behavior also. All of us overcome boredom by engaging ourselves in various social media platforms, maybe YouTube, maybe in show series. Sometimes it's a chat also, sometimes listening to music. But some of us do engage in use the media in a different way, and that is sometimes may leads to cyber related crimes also. So that's a boredom is another area. So boredom and these kind of issues, novelty seeking and experience seeking also, if you have this kind of tendency or if you screen this kind of tendency in your clients, you have to screen for their use of technology or their indulgence in various risky behavior. So These are the factors which affects the uses pattern of the technology. But sometimes uses pattern also manifest as a excessive use that we call as a addictive use of technology. And because sometimes deviant use of cyberspace or sometimes other use of cyberspace allow them to repeatedly use the technology. So when we say addictive use of technology, person should meet 3 criteria. One is called preoccupation with the technology use. Constant craving to remain with technology. Constant craving to remain indulgence or maintain indulgence in various cyber related behavior. So if that is there, that's become first yes towards the addictive use. Second is once you start your engagement in cyberspace, you lose your control. It never remains a half an hour activity. It never remains a 15 minutes activity. It goes for hours together. That manifests as a loss of control. Third is you are using technology despite having consequences in your lifestyle. You know there are certain legal issues have come up, but still you are continuing your use. If these 3 things are happening in your lifestyle, then person is meeting the criteria for addictive use of technology. So then how does use or addictive use predispose people in for various cyber related issues? So one thing which also comes up, like in clinic setting, we don't get so many cases related to the cyber crime, but we do get cases where person has a lot of psychological issues, like they might have experienced cyber violence, they might have experienced bullying, and sometimes because of cultural reason they don't know with whom to discuss, or sometimes there is a lack of knowledge about the available legal facilities. So, and because of both this lack of knowledge about whom to discuss and about legal facilities, they keeps building up various stress as well as psychological issues, which start affecting their day-to-day functioning, which also start affecting their uh, occupational abilities also. So if that is happening, then this is a sign. Like basically we go with, like if your use of technology, whether it is cyber related crimes related issues or excessive use, if you start affecting your psychosocial functioning, maybe your sleep, because we have seen people who sleep with the mobile phone, they lose 60 to 90 minutes of their sleep because we keep answering the chats, messages and all. And every time when any message comes, we say after that message, I would sleep. And that automatically leads to 60 to 90 minutes of loss of sleep also. So we recommend no mobile use while you are at bedtime. Second thing comes loss of communication. We feel that people who are more active on mobile phone, they have significant loss of communication with the people in the real love world. Third is occupational disturbance. For the youngster, we have seen some youngsters have a habit of remaining engaged in online activities while doing online classes. So we have seen whenever we get distracted for any online activities, when we are doing any focus work, our brain takes almost 3 to 5 minutes to get back to the same concentration level. So it means every time when you are getting distracted, the brain will take minimum 3 to 5 minutes, and sometimes it may take longer than that also. So definitely it will affect your productivity also. And along with that, anonymity, disinhibitions may predispose you to engage in various cyber related issues as well as deviant use also. So if you have to, I think and ideally when person has a addiction to technology, it's not the problem of adolescence, it's not the problem of adult. It's, I think everybody, whole family has to take a call how to work on the use of technology, because sometimes we have found the family parenting also is associated with excessive use of technology, both permissive as well as restrictive parenting. And we have found parents who are restrictive, their children have a higher risk of indulging in various addictive or excessive use of technology. So I think with this, I would end my presentation. And in case if any queries and all are there, I would be willing to answer, or maybe in the later sessions. Thank you all. And we have a clinic, so I think my mail goes at shatclinic@gmail.com. So if you want to have any information, you can always write to us. Thank you.
Prachi.
Hello.
Yes. On the behalf of the entire team of VIA Saath, I thank Manoj Kumar sir for his enlightening words and for sparing his time to inform us on more of the cyber clinical psychology counseling. I now would move forward and invite our third panelist, Rakshit Tandon. Mr. Rakshit Tandon is the chairman at India Against Child Abuse. He has experience of more than a decade in security domain. He has also been chairing and have been a part of various important security councils and chapter. He is a cybersecurity consultant to Internet and Mobile Associations of India. He is also marked at resources person, faculty for cyber crime investigation and BPRD, which is the Bureau of Police Research and Development for training law enforcement officers across the country. Mr. Rakshit Tandon is also a member advisory to National Cyber Safety and Security Standards. I now invite Rakshit Tandon sir to speak on the importance of cybersecurity against child and youth.
Thank you, Prachi. Namaskar. Manoj sir, namaskar. Nice to see you after a long time. And Menon sir, thank you so much. Again, a pleasure seeing you once again after Jaipur. And thank you for connecting me. And all the respected members, panelists, and Deepak sir, and all my dear students.
I must mention that Mr. Rakshit Tandon has actually conducted more than several thousands, 4,000 odd training sessions, and more than 10,000, police officers trained, in cyber security and cyber safety. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I am participating third or fourth time in this.
Sorry?
The last 3 months, third or fourth time I am participating in session.
Oh, okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Please go on.
Thank you, Deepak sir. So, as already mentioned, yes, I do only two things. One is talking to students, creating security warriors across the country, which I have trained more than 3.2 million now. And the second is my engagement with the law enforcement and government agencies. And one more thing which I've been doing for the young netizens is creating digital cyber safety warriors, connecting them with the law enforcement agencies. So I do this flagship event of internship programs with the law enforcement agencies across the country. And try to train our students to become cybersecurity warriors. Why? As we have already heard in this last 4 or 5 months, and if you have not, then I would also request you to see the report of Interpol, which has just been released on August 2020, which tells us the impact of COVID-19 on cyber crimes. Tremendously, the numbers have increased. In each city and cyber cells, we have more than 6,000 cybercrime cases. And that tells us the importance that why we need more and more cybersecurity professionals. In flagging towards Digital India, Government of India has taken some good initiatives for cybersecurity in India. The first one, which I appreciate, is the National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center, nciipc.gov.in, where young researchers and hackers, they get an opportunity to engage with the Government of India. And on this website, you can engage, you can do internships, you can be a part of think tank, and you can report vulnerabilities to our critical infrastructure. That is nciipc.gov.in. The second initiative is cyberswachkendra.gov.in, again, initiative for malware and botnet cleaning center. And then the third is the National Reporting Center, the Cybercrime Reporting Portal, which is cybercrime.gov.in. And it gives you a special feature for reporting crime for women and children. And there they get you an option for reporting anonymously. So the question asked for me was cybersecurity for youth. So in this last 5 months, I don't think a single day has gone by where I got a call from a school or a college that somebody vandalized our online class. We were taking an online lecture and somebody with a fake name entered the class and he vandalized the class, or he created a fake account on Instagram, or he started using abusive content. So I think a younger generation, internet, I know, gives you a lot of power. It gives you anonymity. There are so many things which you get, but one should never forget that there is something called digital footprints, and one should create good digital footprints so that wherever you go and whatever you do, and when somebody searches you, so if I will, after 5 years, search Prachi Pandey, The first reference I will get is of the Saath Foundation, and I will see some wonderful activities done on Saath Foundation by this young girl, which has contributed to her good digital footprints. And now when I'll search somebody else's digital footprint after 4 or 5 years, and if I find that he has created some very nasty comments on a YouTube channel, he has been bullying somebody, so you understand what happens to your cyber or e-reputation. And today, let me tell you, students, the companies where you applied for a job and the universities where you apply, they always run through an open source intelligence on the digital footprints. So one should be very careful, and you should not flow with the information. So there is something which is happening wrong on social media. We should take the social media power in a positive direction, create good content. Like, I am very happy to be a part of this foundation where so many young people are driving this force. Otherwise, wherever you go to these older organizations, you will find very old people running the organizations, and they will have Lions clubs and presidents. But today I see MUNs, I see these kind of foundations being brought up by young students, and then you are using the power of internet to leverage and to educate more and more people. And that is what I appreciate. So and this was very sad. If you have heard, a very sad incidents, unfortunate incidents happened in Delhi during the lockdown, was a boys locker room case where some young students from different part of the country were a part of a group, and they were using some demeaning content, inappropriate content, and that content came out in the public, and cybercrime police complaint was filed, and action was taken. So that's what I always say, that okay, you might have some mental grudges online, but you can't bring it online on social media with a fake account and revenge and stuff like that. So we have to stay away from this. We should be aware of the cyber laws, and we should create good digital footprints. We are all entering into the fourth industrial revolution, which is just standing next door. And this fourth industrial revolution is going to be the industry 4.0. And in the industry 4.0, we will be having cyber physical systems, which will be smart machines connected and controlled by embedded softwares, which will be connected through internet, through IoTs. All production will be happening on cyber physical systems. And that is where data will become the new oil, as already mentioned by our Honorable Prime Minister on 15th of August, that the National Cybersecurity Policy to 2020 is about to release. And this new framework is also going to be very promising for our country as well as for the whole world. Cognitive computing, cloud computing, and all this is going to be the new dimensions and domains for our young people. So this is the high time where we let's be very clear here, that it's this field, cyber security or computing or IoT, is not only meant for technical people. You all students from all strands, they have a lot of students from any domain has a lot of potential coming up here. And that is what I see. And that is why I also realize the importance of cyber security. A very typical question being asked by everyone is that how do I start in this field, and what is the right way to start? So I think the basics of network, the basics of database, the basics of operating systems, all these fundamentals have to be very, very clear if you want to come into the domain of cybersecurity. And good knowledge of protocols, multi-user operating systems, basics of coding is required. And then you move to the vulnerability parts of assessing the vulnerability, analyzing traffics, analyzing malwares and stuff like that. So this is how you go deep dive and you get into the cyber security domain. And as my contribution, we have connected with a lot of state agencies. Today itself, I had a training program with Bilaspur Chhattisgarh Police, and they have started a wonderful initiative called Cyber Mitan. Cyber Mitan means cyber friend, cyber dost. And just few weeks back, we had a wonderful initiative of Telangana Police called Cyber, which was again an initiative, a 1-month initiative for online protection for children and women. So every state I'm seeing is very proactive right now and trying to do some activities and internship programs so that they can engage the youth into the positive part of cybersecurity. And in my internships, I saw a wonderful response from young people developing such wonderful projects in cybersecurity, which could be utilized for investigation, which could be utilized for research work. So that is what I look forward to. I would be open to questions. I can go into any direction and I can keep on talking and I can jeopardize your whole conference and other speakers. So I don't want to do that. So if you could have some direct questions for me, my domains have been crime investigation, cybersecurity training. I do run a platform called Hacker Shala where I am taking students and I'm training them right from grade 5th. We call it the Junior Hacker Shala and Senior Hacker Shala. So any questions for me if you want, please.
Sir, if you can just intimate all the people that what can be their first step which they can take when they are facing some cyber bullies or any kind of fraud. Because yesterday also I got one girl stating that she is facing us bully. She is getting bullied by one of the boy who is just giving her, saying that, threatening her that he will be wiring his personal pictures. So what can be that first step the girl or the person can take whenever they face some issues?
So I thank you for this question, because I know I keep on getting a lot of complaints from young people of their personal content being blackmailed or getting viral or something. So the first immediate response is to go to cybercrime.gov.in. There is a women and child special option. There is also an option called report anonymously. You don't even have to share your details. If you are below 18, you report your content under CSAM, that is child sexual abusive material. And let me tell you, if any content below 18 is there, we have zero tolerance for it once you report. So no need to be scared of the blackmailer. There is no such platform apart from dark web where you can openly post such content. Immediately, the moment this content comes on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, we have zero tolerance. It will be pulled down immediately. And once this blackmailer posts this content, he has officially committed a crime under the IT Act. 5 years of jail, 10 lakh rupees fine. And there is digital footprints, you have no protection. Recently, a 22-year-old boy was arrested for posting a nude picture of her ex-girlfriend on Instagram. So first thing, we should not be scared. Second thing is immediately block the bully. Don't respond to the bullies. I always say that very strongly, that on social media, there are all kinds of people. There are people who might dogpile you, who might name shame you, body shame you. No need to engage with them. And the first thing to do is secure your account with security and privacy. The problem starts because your accounts are public. Your photographs are public. Your contacts are public. Your followers are public. So the impact of bullying is higher. Now, if my profile is very private and no outsider can enter my information, he cannot extort me. He cannot blackmail me. He cannot harass me. So the first thing is respond immediately by blocking the bully. Report the bully to the social media platform, and please report it to the cyber crime portal. Now there are two questions. One, the victim doesn't want her name. I don't want my family to be involved. I can't tell it to parents. This is a very common problem. So on our website of government, we have an option to report content anonymously. Immediately report the content. But reporting is a must. And once these kind of actions are taken, please share these actions so that the people should be aware that, see, there is nothing called anonymity on internet. आपके अंदर किसी के लिए jealousy है, revenge है, तो आप social media पे नहीं निकाल सकते. ये बात लोगों को समझ में आनी चाहिए. अभी एक छोटा सा एक इनिशिएटिव हुआ था, एक एनजीओ ने किया है इनिशिएटिव फॉर स्टॉपिंग हैरेसमेंट कॉल्ड मिशन जोश. उन्होंने एक फिल्म एक्ट्रेस है सोनाक्षी सिन्हा, उनको जोड़ा इसमें इनिशिएटिव में. कई सीरीज ऑफ प्रोग्राम्स हुए, उसमें किसी प्रोग्राम ने सोनाक्षी सिन्हा को अब्यूज किया बहुत गंदे तरीके से. उन्होंने इमीडिएटली कॉग्निजेंस ली, साइबर सेल में रिपोर्ट किया, और अगर आप उनकी प्रोफाइल पे जाके देखेंगे तो तीसरे दिन वो आदमी अरेस्ट हो गया. और उसको ये कभी सोचा ही नहीं था, उसने बोला मैंने तो ऐसे ही लिख दिया, मतलब he had no criminal intention to abuse. So I want to tell all my young people कि आप जो इंटरनेट देख देख के कभी कभी इंस्पायर हो जाते हो ना वो अच्छे वाले शब्द लिखने के लिए, प्लीज सोच समझ के लिखना. आप किसी को अगर अब्यूज करोगे तो ये आपके कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में नहीं आता है. कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में फ्रीडम ऑफ स्पीच लिखा हुआ है, फ्रीडम ऑफ एक्सप्रेशन लिखा हुआ है, फ्रीडम ऑफ अब्यूज नहीं लिखा हुआ है. और हमारे भारतीय कानून में 67 में साफ लिखा हुआ है whoever, वहां पे वर्ड, पहला वर्ड यहां से शुरू होता है whoever publish, transmit or tries to publish any obscene content electronically is punishable for 3 years with a fine of 5 lakh rupees. Simple. And this is the best thing to sensitize and educate people. And report to the content. That is the immediate response a person should get.
Thank you, Rakshit. I think there will be some more questions coming up in the chat box. Already people have been posting questions.
Gee,
so
please.
We'll come back to that, after the next presentation is also over. So over to you, Prachi.
Except Prachi, before the Prerna, just give vote of thanks to Dr. Manoj sir, because I think he wants to leave.
I also have to leave. I have a program with Bilaspur Police. So if any questions for me, you can shoot it right now. I have a live session starting with the SP immediately after your session. So I am so sorry. I also have to excuse myself.
We will do one thing. We will post the messages to you by email.
Please send them. I will definitely reply back to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Prachi, over to you. Yes. Let us thank both Mr. Rakshit Tandon and Dr. Manoj, please.
Sir, before I have just a request for you.
Deepak sir, I think you are frozen. Hello.
If you have any, just mention about that. It is continuously against our leaders, prime minister, chief ministers, political leaders, film stars, continuously doing. And the police, you are proceed to the police. What the police is not taking, we know that 5 years punishment is there. Most of the, even after it is in the cyber platform, it is live everywhere. Police is not taking any action generally. How are you seeing that? Why don't you advise your police people to do something like that against that?
Sir, Deepak sir, the challenge here in our country is the biggest challenge here in our law enforcement and police is that we need a complaint to act upon. So police say there is no proactive policing as of now on social media in our country until and unless it becomes a very sensitive issue. If it becomes a very sensitive issue, then you will see the police coming into action and the person might be arrested also and the content might be pulled down. But now this trolling and all is becoming, they are trying to accept it as it is. They only take action once a complaint is filed or an FIR is filed. And there have been cases of abusing the prime minister or the government or any minister or something. So actions have been taken, but then it has to be judiciously calculated whether it is not a violation of freedom of speech and expression and democracy. But yes, I totally agree to it, but no proactive decisions are taken. You file a complaint, action will be taken, whether it is against anyone, whether it is a film star or whether it is not a film star. And even they have directly gone to the court to take actions in many cases. But yes, I think after all these discussions, there has been a lot of discussions of controlling and moderating such social media handles very seriously, because they do impact the human psychology also of younger people, because the younger people, they start thinking, okay, this is a cool thing, we can also do that. So it has to be taken up seriously. I do agree. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would like to, on behalf of VR SAT, I would like to thank Dr. Manoj Kumar and Mr. Rakshit Tandon for giving us such valuable inputs on how to first of all protect ourselves and then go on our crusade for justice. it is a very important motto that all of us should keep in mind. And we are very grateful to have such a great panel and another great speaker coming up. And we are going to be bombarding you with a lot of questions, sir and ma'am. We hope you can get back to us if you have the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. We'll meet soon again. We have to meet soon again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
And Dr. Manoj Kumar Sharma, thank you very much for the chat box, links which you have mentioned, which you have shared. And, also Mr. Rakshit Tandon, we will also be looking forward to your responses. We'll share the emails with you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Prachi, you can invite now.
Okay, thank you, Rakshit sir. Moving forward, we would now invite our final panelist, Dr. Jaya Kumar. Dr. Jaya Kumar, Associate Professor and at Center for Psychosocial Support in Disaster Management. He has over 20 years of experience in working with natural and man-made disasters. Dr. Jaya Kumar has also worked in NDMA as Psychosocial Nodal Point for coordinating and editing NDMA guidelines on psychosocial support in disasters. He has also developed various modules and tools on psychosocial care for the emergencies. I would now invite Dr. Jaya Kumar to speak on telecounseling for trauma care and psychosocial support. So, please.
Thank you, Prachi, for the introduction. And first of all, I would like to thank Professor Menon, my mentor and teacher and a guide over last 18 years.
Thank you.
For bringing me here. And thank you, Kanika, for your crisis interventions. You are very fast in putting up this show.
Thank you, sir.
And my respected co-panelists as well, and my dear participants. Before I start, I think Dr. Manoj, who is the foremost expert in this area, almost briefly completed what are all the impact and how this is actually impacting. And the learned speakers before me also covered the enormity of problems which we face in the present times. My area is actually emergency and disasters. So we are living in a new normal. I would not go into theoretical aspects, all those things. Rather than I'll briefly share with you that we are actually experiencing a disaster collectively, globally, nationally, locally, and in community-wise. Each one of us are affected by this biological emergency, the COVID-19 present day. And the disaster mental health, I would like to say that the psychology of disaster say that disasters, the experiences or reactions of people, individual, family, and community are normal responses to an abnormal situation. Usually disasters or emergencies are abnormal event, and the way we react to these events are normal response to an abnormal situation. So all of us are getting familiarized with this new normal. And what is the new normal? And this is COVID-19 per se. One of the few things which is the hallmark of any emergency and disasters is that it ruffles your life, the comfortable life, or what we call homeostasis of people who are actually living happily, going about their business or work or any other things is getting disrupted because of this enormity because of this disaster. So the first and foremost is that disturbance in your day-to-day activity comes in any emergency. All of us, but we are not actually understanding it, that how it is actually having an effect on psychological part. The impact is actually going on to various domains, like physical domain. If you look at it biologically, what you are actually undergoing, each one of you during the COVID, that your sleep pattern, there may be a change in the sleep pattern. There may be a change in the appetite. There are actually changes in the way you interacted, way you socialized, way you went about your work every day. So there is actually a large amount of disturbance and change, or you have to adjust to a new situation which was thrown by this COVID-19. So there is a physical domain, there is a change, there is also psychological domain. There is an impact on this also, because you are no more interacting. You are living in uncertain, helpless, hopeless times. So you are anxious. You are stuck up in one area or in your house for a longer period of time, and you have to see the same old 3 or 4 people every day. So you're getting frustrated. You're getting angry. You get into arguments, and you don't know how to channelize this. So there is actually a large amount of problem happens in the psychological domain. And also the economical domain, which is very important, because COVID also brought, a large amount of economical impact. So that is also one of the most stressful and anxiety producing. And the major aspect is that what we call it SMS. We are all actually very familiar with the terminology, the SMS, now the social distancing, the masking, the sanitizing, that is SMS, which I'm meaning. So this is actually also brought in large amount of change in the social domain. We are not interacting, we are not doing that. Man is a social animal. So there is actually always, there is a impact in this domain also. Added to that, also the spiritual aspect is also gone down, because most of the temples, mosques, and places of worship are closed. So the impact is at every aspect of our lives, whether it is individual, whether it is family, community, and globally, geopolitically, and everywhere it is there. So what is there actually that in the area of digitization? Dr. Manoj mentioned that everybody has actually the a mobile phone. The digitally we are actually connected, but emotionally, the physically, socially, we are actually going away from the normal social interactions. So that is where actually the catch here. So without we are realizing, we are getting into certain aspects to cope with the changed situation during the this emergency, and that actually brings in large amount of dysfunction, or actually there is a functionality impairment actually happens in our domain, whether it is in terms of focusing on a work, or concentrating on some work, or delivering on something, or the outcome actually not able to perform the way we used to perform, or we are not able to actually maintain the same sort of relationship, or we are not even sustaining that sort of a relationship. So there is actually impact happened in various domains. So absolutely, there is actually a need. Psychological aspect is multifold. There are a number of studies already is there coming out in every part of the country, including our own country. So I mean, you look at it, the psychological impact actually outnumbers the other impact, but it is quite invisible. So we are actually more or less talking about physical impact, the economic impact, the mobility, not able to move. So we are actually talking about all these visible sort of things. But inside, we are also taking a heavy toll on psychological aspect. So for this, what Dr. Manoj said, that you have to follow certain aspect of issues when we are dealing with the digitization. So I think I will stop this. There are actually, I can take certain questions. So how to give counseling? See, nowadays, this counseling is actually always a one-to-one process. And we are actually going through an emergency, which is a global in nature. So we require more of a psychosocial care rather than counseling. Counseling only goes into people who are completely dysfunctional. Like yesterday, I saw one boy of 21 years. He is not going to college. College means not attending the online courses. He is most of the time engaged with the mobile phone, watching YouTubes, not eating, not sleeping, getting irritated. So these are tougher. This is actually going into that clinical domain only. They need all this counseling, all these therapies, and even at many, cases, medication also is required. But not everybody requires this counseling. But every one of us requires psychosocial care, that like how to reduce the screen time, how to actually get back to our normal sort of a rituals and all these things. For example, everybody watches eating TV and eating. So there is actually change of behaviors over a period of a time, which I mean, we are all actually undergoing that. So that is where actually that we suggest psychosocial care rather than counseling to these aspects. So which we can, I can take certain questions. So one of the thing is that we have to maintain a sort of a routine. So we have to actually maintain a screen time. So we have to maintain a digital hygiene. How we have a sleep hygiene, how we have a personal hygiene, we should also have a digi hygiene. Digi hygiene is not actually always keeping this mobile when you are talking with anybody, you are eating something, or actually we are socializing. So you need to actually have certain aspects. So you have to restrict this screen. Somebody was talking, the first speaker was talking about the screen time. Dr. Manoj was also talking about the screen time. So there are certain protocols, very simple protocols, which we need to follow that. That is all actually the psychosocial care, which each and every one of us can follow it. And added to that, this is not restricted to only to the youngsters or I mean the children, school children. This is cutting across every one of us, irrespective of age group, whether it's I mean the old or the young, or the family or the somebody. So it is actually cutting across. So we need to actually also contextualize where we are and what we are doing and how we are using this digital, whether we are using it for optimally or we are not using it for optimally. So there actually needs to be certain protocols are there. I think most of you can go and get it from the Dr. Manoj's that link is complete is there. You can even do a self-assessment also. For example, there is if you take more than 6 to 7 selfies in a day, then you are into trouble. So I don't know how many of you are actually taking more than 6 to 7 selfies. So and we are also actually having today the gaming aspect. The WHO recently included gaming as a disorder. So it is nowadays diagnosable just like that. And this digitization is coming with, it's like a double-edged sword. One side, it actually gives you enormous amount of power, knowledge, everything. And other side, it is also actually equally putting you at risk. The difference is that it is also an addiction, which is very well accepted scientifically. And the kind of the brain aspect with the part which is actually getting stimulated once you drink, the same sort of the part of the brain is getting stimulated the more you actually even looking at your screen. So it is also actually an addiction, digital addiction today. And NIMHANS is the one of the first and the foremost institute to actually run a very structural scientific sort of a clinic on this aspect. We are actually now going and capacity building all over India on this aspect, providing care, creating systems. So we'll be happy to help you on that. Dr. Manoj is leading that. He is the foremost expert. And I think I should stop it here. One important aspect is we are talking about only the individuals. There is also this digital impact. It is not only affecting on the psychology of the individual, it is also affecting the family, the relationship. At the end of the day, the harmony of the family gets disturbed. So that is the end point of the things. So the digital, I mean, the time bomb also takes you into ill-being. So we are all talking about well-being. So when, because of this aspect, you are more prone to ill-being. So that is where actually that we need to use this digital technology more of an optimally to increase our well-being rather than should not lead it to ill-being. I think I should stop it now. I can take some questions. I think a number of students are there, school principals are there, and NGO friends are there, and different groups are there. So I'll be very happy to take some questions. Thank you.
On behalf of the entire team of We Are Saath, I thank you, Dr. Jaykumar sir, for your informative words and your time.
And I think moving ahead, we have Advocate Sriram, who will be just giving us some legal ideas and legal areas that how we can move forward with this thing. Sir, I invite you for the legal aspect. Thank you for coming.
I thank Saath Foundation and everybody here for inviting me. I'll be as short as possible. I was asked to just give an opinion on what would be the practical options before a person if he feels he's been bullied in a cyber platform. I think a large part of it has already been taken care of. But from experience as a lawyer dealing with these kind of cases, one major barricade I have found in the psyche of people was that you consider things that happen in the cyberspace as something very alien to what happened in normal life. Like the very expression cyberbullying, I think we need to slowly change it and understand it as bullying only. Because one of the reasons why many policemen do not, register an FIR, it was pointed out earlier that for every action in the cyberspace, what you require is registration of an FIR. And registration of an FIR is very much a very real process. There is no cyber involved in that. And one of the things is that each and every offense which is available, as an offense to be registered in a normal environment, all of them are available if it's done in a cyber way as well. Say, for example, defamation. If you are defamed on a cyber platform, exactly the same way you are defamed in a journal or in a newspaper or in front of everybody, exactly the same way the offense is maintainable and you can register an FIR for cyber defamation as well. If at all you're being spoken to with regard to your religion or your caste or each of these things, your regionalistic things, if hatred is being spewed or if you're singled out, your identity is being singled out, each of these things, if it is an offense in the outside world, if it's done in a cyberspace, then also it becomes exactly the same offense. The fact that certain provisions of the IT Act, like Section 67 of the IT Act, etc., are available to a person when he is bullied in the cyberspace, it is only an addition to what is available when you are when this offense is done against you in real world. These are only an addition. All the offenses which are done, which are maintainable against you in normal life, are all maintainable in if it's done in a cyberspace as well. I think this is a realization that we need to have. This is a realization I think to a large extent policemen also ought to have, because I have found multiple experiences in which when you go to a police station and they say something has been done on Twitter, they would say, oh, after all it is done on Twitter. I think we need to very specifically point out it to them in our letters, or when you tell them. Even an email can actually register an FIR. We need to but specifically tell them that each of these offenses are maintainable, even if it's done in cyberspace. And obviously, I will have to, as a lawyer, tell each of you that if an FIR is not registered, we have to immediately move to a magistrate under 156(3), saying that I had specifically asked this particular policeman to register an FIR. I had given screenshots of the cyberbullying done against me. He has refused to register an FIR. This is a process we would do even otherwise, not only for cyberbullying, but this process I would wish to remind everyone, this has to be done, and we have to somehow get the criminal law in motion. That would be the first step in your drive against cyberbullying. And once that is done, as it was earlier on pointed out, removing of the content is easy. And one general awareness I think all of us should have is to keep evidence of these things. It's not entirely difficult to take screenshots and keep it, because unlike the real world, these things can be removed easily. Therefore, it will have to be preserved. Whatever evidence of cyberbullying you see, these have to be preserved, and you will have to attach it along with your complaint to the police. I've had an experience of a gentleman giving a Facebook live against a certain community, a professional community. This was against the doctors and nurses community. And he had mentioned himself to be in the United States. But when we gave an, when we registered an FIR, it was found out by the cyber cell in Kerala that he was living just next door, and he was a person who was just one of those people who had a jealous relationship with these people, and it is very easy to track it. So my experience says that the offenses relating to cyberbullying are not as difficult as it seemed to be from the outside to be tracked by an effective police system. I'm sure somebody like Deepak sir would say that in Kerala, multiple number of cyberbullying cases are very easily hatched by the police, and there is very good positive result insofar as the response to cyber offenses are concerned. I would say that in the state of Kerala, because I have personal experiences insofar as the police is concerned there. I'm sure it will be the same in Delhi as well. The obvious thing is to sensitize the police insofar as the nature of these offenses are concerned, and the procedures to be done insofar as these offenses are concerned. I wouldn't wish to speak very long. In case there is any question from anyone, I would be very happy to address them.
Thank you so much.
Prachi is on hold. Prachi, you are there?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think the panelists are over now.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I think there is a question. It's a question regarding Mr. Gaurav Gupta. So Gaurav Gupta is there. I'm going to ask directly. So Gupta is there. Gaurav Gupta.
Gaurav, are you there in the panel, in the session? Gaurav?
Yes, I'm there.
Okay, you just have.
Yeah, you can ask. Please ask the question accordingly. We can request one of the panelists to answer that. No problem.
Okay, so I asked that the algorithm that Google Ads analyze when we search something, for example, if we search something on Flipkart, if we for an item, then if we open, for example, say Google Chrome, some other website, then we find Google Ads to display the ads on the items we searched on Flipkart. So is that kind of accessing our key mapping or whatever you say, is that a security threat?
Question
I think this is a very, very important question. I think
Since Mr. Rakshit Tandon and Dhanya Menon have both left, I will attempt to respond to you. Basically, the questions which come up normally when you're actually looking at any website, when you're doing a Google search, and then you go to one particular site, Google actually has got this algorithm which basically looks at search patterns of people across the world. And that's why the frequent searches which happens, it's like Twitter saying what are the themes which are trending every day. That is based on the number of people who are actually tweeting and retweeting and sharing and then tagging each other and so on. So which means basically how many eyeballs are actually there for every digital footprint which is actually happening on any site. You can track them. In fact, you will see that in any website which you're going frequently, you will see that there is a counter which is at the bottom. Okay, and that counter is essentially set to look at the eyeballs, a number of people who are actually visiting that site. You can also set it in a way that you can also look at which countries people are actually coming from, which language they speak, and so on. So you can actually go into digital analytics of the behavior patterns of the people, looking at the socioeconomic and demographic profile of the person. Say, for instance, if you're looking at buying a property, a 3-bedroom villa, then you will actually be talking about a 1 crore or 1.5 crore property purchase, which you're actually looking at it, which means basically that you are a high net worth individual who actually can look at investing in a 1.5 crore property in Delhi or in Mumbai, and so once you actually do that, then the system can actually make an assessment that you are a high net worth individual who actually has that kind of resources. So the security aspect which we need to be careful about is not related to the searches which you're making, but if you are actually going into sites which are not really advisable for people to go to, and then your footfall is already there, then you are also becoming vulnerable, because if you're actually using a credit card for a payment on a site which actually is a fake site, or a site which actually has malicious intent, then you have to be extremely careful. But otherwise, doing a search on Google is not really unsafe. But by searching on Google, depending on the kind of questions which you're asking, if you're going into undesirable sites, then you have to be careful, because then you may be hunted down by people who would know that you are a person who actually has those tendencies. Then they would actually be wanting to take money out of you by directing you to various websites and so on. So I think that one has to be careful when you're using the internet, but there are certain behavior patterns which we need to follow to ensure that you are yourself. I'm sure that that may have at least answered some of your questions, one part of your question at least, and if you have any specific further responses required, then you can put it on the chat box. We will share it with both Mr. Rakshit Tandon and also Dhanya Menon. Thank you. Anybody else who would like to respond to that question, please feel free. Thank you.
Actually, sir, it's a type of a privacy invasion, but it is everybody is facing like that. Definitely, if you search something today, tomorrow you will get 10 calls about that. Whichever the area you are searching, it is happening very well. In a way, it is in our privacy also. But there is, as per law, it is not restricted or not restricted, but people misusing this. So when there is a serious issue, we take up this issue and to have some action against that. So when a proper case we are getting, we can take it up. It's a real case of privacy violations only, because of they can come to know that what I am doing, where I am going, what I am searching for that. So this is a optimization, whatever they are using that word.
Right.
So it is actually when a serious case is that we take up that. And another question I think Sriram can answer is Shreya Saini. Shreya is there? Shreya, you're there? Shreya Saini?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You can unmute and ask. I think Sriram can, a lot of lawyers here. We can all answer that. We can just ask your question.
Sir, yes, sir. Sir, my question was like, it was, I registered an FIR. So the police registered the FIR regarding a fraud transaction that was done through my credit card, which was it was approximately about around 70,000 rupees. So what happened was I didn't get any notification to me, because someone, the day I filed the complaint, the very same day I got a notification on my Gmail that to squash off this FIR and I will return the amount as blah, 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 and also blackmailed me on the same basis that I'll share your pictures or whatever it is. So I had Gmail. I also received Gmail notifications and on my phone number also that if some transaction has been done by me. But that person, whosoever it was, he has written in that Gmail, in that mail, that he has hacked my Gmail. I had your phone, your credit card, and everything. And then that's the reason I didn't receive any notification on 24th, on which day the transaction was done. I came to know 3 to 4 months back when the EMI started like deducting from my debit card account. So the police said that it's merely fraud from and these people cannot be catched so easily as they keep changing their locations. So then police did nothing. It's been almost 3 months and there is no intimation from the police side of perspective. And that the person also stopped sending me mails, and then I recovered my all accounts. So this is the case. So what can be the mere solution to this problem?
Sriram, can you just attend That question,
Shreya, hi. I understand that you had registered an FIR. I want to know one aspect. Did the police register an FIR and give you a copy of the FIR?
Yes, yes, sir. I received a copy of the FIR on my mail, and as soon as I received it on my mail, the other person who has already hacked my Gmail got an intimation that the FIR is being registered. The very next day, when I took the hard copy and reached the police station, that very same time, he sent me a Gmail and telling everything, blah blah blah, that I know everything about you. I'll share the pictures and all everything, and please squash off this FIR or complaint. We didn't do anything. The police said that wait for him. If he's saying that he'll return the money, let him return first. So I gave him another bank account details regarding the same if he's giving back the money. So what he did after 2 or 3 days, after lingering on the matter, like 2 to 3 days, postponing it, I'll give it today, I'll give it in the evening, like that. So what he did, that he tried hacking the other account also, which I gave him as a like giving back the money. This was the thing. And then he just disappeared.
I think, Shreya, you should register another FIR because blackmailing you, threatening you, and trying to hack your account would all constitute further offenses. They do not end with the initial offense which is committed. I think you should register a further FIR or give further information. The police can decide either to register a fresh FIR or to add on to the
So they have everything. They have everything. Every mail, every detail that I receive from them, they have everything. But they're saying these people cannot be caught because I'm from UP, Lucknow.
I think, Shreya, I think the police is mistaken or their information is wrong when they say that they can't be traced just because their locations are changed again and again. Just one single mobile number which is being used is sufficient actually for the police to track hold of a person. We have multiple experiences of persons who have been caught only because you know the mobile number which is used by them, because by tracking the tower it is not entirely difficult. We wouldn't say that it's very possible.
And so he didn't use his phone number, he used his Gmail. He used a Gmail, and that too the Gmail was someone of my known, where I study, where I'm in Indore right now, studying BLLB. So that the name, the Gmail he used was also someone I know him personally. And when I contacted him, he had no knowledge of anything regarding that.
I think the whole conspectus of things you need to let the police know, and in spite of that, there is no action from the part of the police. You would have to approach a court of law saying that in spite of the fact that I have intimated police about these occurrences which happened after the registration of the FIR, in spite of multiple times me informing the police, no action has been taken. You will have to approach a court of law for action on the part of the police against these persons, and you can give all these details to the court you approach. Depends upon which court you would go to would depend upon you will have to consult a lawyer, give these information. But I think it's time to approach a court of law for a particular order to the police for taking action in this matter.
Thank you so much, sir.
Just I add one thing. I think in my professional experience, I think thousands of cases, most of the cases, police have no interest, 70,000 small amount or something like that. And last year, I got a case, I got a consultation for a 36 lakh rupees. One lady, one person from outside, when he's showing that he's coming from outside, and he's just been in an intimate relationship, and thereafter exchanging some photographs and other things, and around even 36 lakh rupees. But she's not ready to file any complaint. She's used her husband's money and all, but she's not ready to complain. And lot of cases are coming. These people are every day it's happening. So what is happening? Police is not taking care of this thing. Most of there will be no proper legal advice. There is no proper advice. Police not taking care of this thing, and it's not reaching the correct people. Every day they are changing their place and their anonymity, but the money is reaching some bank account. Then bank account, definitely there will be KYC. there will be details of that bank, and that person can be tracked. But police is not doing, other people also not doing. But now Sriram is very specifically mentioned. If you want to fight it out, you have to approach the court. We have proper system for that. 153 we can go, private complaint we can file, so fresh complaint we can file. Lot of things are there, including a serious offense also. This is actually it is outraging the modesty of women. Actually, it's an offense against women also.
Yes,
Serious offense. What we can do is, if you want any legal help, the entire team, we have a team to help you. If you want to, you please contact Kanika or Prerna, who may be in charge of this. They will help you for this, and can find. And any problem for money, there is legal service authority to get appointed. They will appoint lawyers, and you just do the follow-up. I don't think our system, it won't be finished in a month or a few weeks or something like that. Lot of cases are taking lot of years also. But if you are deciding this, if you have a will, we can find out this person, we can punish them. All the people who are hearing that, if you have a will to just to follow up, do the follow up, to stay with that, lot of people after a few weeks, few months, some years also will take. They will leave it and come. When the fighter is there, who are ready to cooperate till the end, definitely our law, it is lagging, but we have a strong law to catch the culprits and to punish them. Thank you anyway for this question, and it's applicable to a lot of people. That's why we are taken up in a serious manner.
I think, sir, before moving to the next question, Vinod sir has to leave for some another session. So thank you so much, sir, for always being there for us.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed the session. Thank you. And
thank you so much. Thank you, sir.
Kumar, thank you very much for coming and joining and for sharing your thoughts. Thank you. Good day. Enjoy yourself, and then look forward to the questions on the email. Thank you.
Yes, sir, definitely. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye, sir. Okay, so anybody else wants to ask the question can unmute and just go ahead with the questions. If anybody want to ask the question from Jess.
Kanika, even I have a meeting at 6. So I have to go. It's a physical meeting in my hospital. So that's an evening review for the week. So I need to go. Thank you for the opportunity. If anything is there, kindly mail us.
Please, before you're leaving, I have to suggest one or two things. The aspect which you have mentioned is very serious in this time. You know, the families, this gadget and this these things are taking a lot of time, and interaction is not there. Lot of issue of depression and all these things. Even though the family is in 2-3 bedrooms or one room they're staying, but one side with another mobile, other with TV, other with their computer and other things. So interaction is it is not happening at all. So the 2-3 sessions earlier also, this is Kurian Joseph sir, who is the chief patron of Business Management Collective. We are all part of that. So they will always say that when the family time, when you are going for your food, the breakfast, the family members all have to sit together and do that. And the screen time and this gadget time, we don't use at this time. Lunch and dinner, whenever all this, now these days, this COVID time, lot of time we spend at home. So we have to be a free time, free gadget, free TV, free computer time we must have. You very specifically, very meaningful way we are explained that. We are very much thankful to you, and we'll contact you for the further things also.
Sure.
We just expressing heavy gratitude for you taking that issue. A lot of people are, I think, in the real meaning they go and they'll follow in their life. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Okay, I think anybody else want to ask some questions so that we can take up, and then else we can.
Kanika, I would like to answer Vikas Razdan's question. Why RBI has no control over UPI scams?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so Vikas, and I'm speaking from limited knowledge from what I have. There might be other aspects to it, but from what I know, RBI has constituted the NPCI, that is the National Payment Corporation of India, and that is the body that is responsible for giving permissions to banks and third-party applications for regulating the payment system in India. So whenever a scam or an issue arises with the functioning of these banks or any payment system that is being conducted online, it is the NPCI that is the regulatory body. No doubt it has been created by the RBI, but NPCI is a corporation of banks. It has it has some members from the RBI as chairpersons, but it is wholly it's basically a conglomerate of banks, which is why RBI sheds responsibility whenever it is questioned about any scams that happen on the UPI platform.
Okay, thank you, Prerna. I think Mr. Abhishek wants to answer the question of Gaurav, which he had asked earlier.
Hello.
Yes. Go ahead.
So, am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible. Go ahead.
गौरव जी का क्वेश्चन था कि अगर हम गूगल पे कुछ टाइप करते हैं तो क्या हमें गूगल मॉनिटर करता है या ऐसा कुछ। तो इसका सबसे पहले आंसर कि गूगल हमारे हर स्टेप को मॉनिटर करता है क्योंकि वो गूगल के प्राइवेसी पॉलिसी में आता है। तो अगर हम गूगल पे सपोज आपने कभी नोटिस किया हो कि अभी अगर आप कोई शॉपिंग करना चाहते हैं सपोज मिंत्रा से या फ्लिपकार्ट से, तो जैसे ही आप उसको शॉपिंग लिस्ट में रखोगे या फिर आप उसको व्यू करोगे तो नेक्स्ट टाइम आप देखोगे कि आपके फेसबुक या इंस्टाग्राम के पे या फिर जो भी वेबसाइट्स आप दूसरे वेबसाइट विजिट करेंगे हर जगह सेम पोस्ट आने लगती है कि यहाँ पे ये सेल चल रहा है। सेम वही चीज का जो आपने देखा था पहले खरीदने के लिए उसी चीज का वो आता है। इसे हम बोलते हैं ना, ये सब होता है बेसिकली अगर हम टेक्निकल टर्म में बोलते हैं ये सब कुकीज की वजह से होता है। अभी जैसे कि बहुत लोग एक बार इश्यू आया था, एक केस में डिस्कस करना चाहूंगा कि जो इंडियन रेलवे का वेबसाइट है जहाँ पे टिकट मतलब काटने के बहुत सारे मतलब लोग यूज करते हैं, तो वहाँ पे बहुत सारे फोटोग्राफिक ऐसे एड्स आने लगे थे। फिर बहुत लोगों ने कंप्लेन किया था कि वो वहाँ पे एड्स क्यों आते हैं। तो उसका बेसिक यही रीजन होता है कि हम जो अपने ब्राउजर में देखते हैं तो वहाँ पे कुकीज बोल के स्टोर होता है। कुकीज बेसिकली कोई भी एक वेब सर्वर को जो यूजर्स होते हैं उनको आइडेंटिफाई करने के लिए और वो क्या डाटा देख रहे हैं या फिर क्या डाटा एनालाइज कर रहे हैं उसके लिए होता है। तो ये सब बेसिकली क्या होता है, ये सब एक तरह से देखा जाए तो ये सब बिजनेस पॉलिसीज है। इस बिजनेस पॉलिसीज के थ्रू जो बड़ी बड़ी कंपनी जैसे गूगल, फेसबुक सब एक दूसरे का डाटा एक्सचेंज करती है, उसके थ्रू हमें इस टाइप के एड्स आने स्टार्ट होते हैं। तो अगर हम इनसे बचना चाहते हैं तो इसमें हम दो काम कर सकते हैं। एक तो सबसे पहले कि अगर हम अगर इनकॉग्निटो मोड का यूज करें तो ज़्यादा बेटर है, या फिर हम गूगल की जगह दूसरा सर्च इंजन यूज कर सकते हैं। जैसे कि अगर प्राइवेसी के हिसाब से देखें तो गूगल से बहुत ज़्यादा सेफ एंड सिक्योर है डकडकगो। अगर आप लोगों ने नाम सुना होगा तो डकडकगो बहुत ही अच्छा और इफेक्टिव है क्योंकि वो कोई भी अपने यूजर्स को ट्रैक नहीं करती है।
Okay, thank you so much, Abhishek. Thank you. Okay, anybody else wants to take up any question, or else we'll move towards a conclusion. Okay, I think so. We can move towards the conclusion. Rest of the questions we can answer through the mail, or.
Because this nice answer, Mr. Vikas actually. Vikas Razdan is there. It's available right now. Can you?
Vikas, are you there? Vikas?
Can he unmute and just come and just we can explain what is the some more because he's saying that 50 crores and all. What was the base of something he can ask to be more? We can finish here on time. When only for 9 minutes we are over. I think 5:45 is for. Vikas is there.
Vikas, are you there? You can just unmute yourself and just come up. You can just unmute Vikas and.
Yes, I'm here on you.
Okay. Just go ahead with your question.
Actually, I was going to the newspaper a few days back. Around 15,000. It was around 15,000 cyber scam complaints were there. And the amount that was there, it was around 50 crore rupees in Gujarat for the last 8 months. And I think it was all UPI transactions through the third party. And taking all these facts into consideration, I think RBI should make such laws and banning such third party apps which go for such transactions.
I think they are not considered as a third party. They are the intermediaries into it.
No.
Which they.
There are, so what happens because India does not have a proper data protection law as of now. It has been
Yeah.
presented in the parliament. The law is not yet in. So the problem is that it is still a gray area which companies, MNCs and foreign companies exploit. So, for example, let's say Facebook. Facebook has a server in India, but after WhatsApp was acquired by Facebook, WhatsApp has been operating through the server of Facebook in India, which is not technically allowed if WhatsApp wants a share in the UPI interface. So these are some loopholes that are being exploited due to lack of a proper cyber data protection law in the country. I think Deepak sir.
Yeah, I think that is the result. That is, I think this loophole leads to many, not only the Gujarat thing, and there are many scams which is going on because of this only.
Yeah, Kanika, this is not a 50 crore. This is a 50 lakh crore issue. All over India, we are already handling that issue. I think Prerna is ready because of I'm always asking to do that. She's the we are handling this and this week coming week also we have to enter that. It's the biggest issue what India is facing right now. The issue, main problem, the people, they don't know. If you're losing something, your data is taking somebody and misusing. 99% people, they don't know about that. They have no knowledge about that. What is data? What is the data protection? This is the oil of the next generation. Data only will be the oil of next generation. The entire world will be ruling on the base of the data. Data will be the base of everything. So if you have the data of the people, you can control the country. Not only this country, all the country. But still today, our government, our courts, or our judicial system is not properly identified this issue. And I think Sriram also is seriously working on that. Sriram, you can just update something from your side and we can conclude about the data issue. Sriram is very much working on that.
Yeah, if you look at it, we all fought the issue of right of privacy. We were fighting it definitely from a data point of view because the right of privacy which is available against invasion into your house, etc., are no longer relevant today. The real problem of right of privacy in one way is your personalized financial data, for example. Financial data includes your preferences. One of the most important financial data which you have with you, many people do not realize, is your preference. What do you want to buy from the market? Is what there are hundreds of companies which are waiting only to analyze your financial behavior. And it's not like you need to share it with everyone all the time. I might want to buy a certain thing, but I don't want everyone to know. And I don't want people to analyze what I would do in future by understanding where I'm buying. Earlier on, if you purchased anything through an open market, you would just pay cash and buy it. Today, your credit card people would have all the data relating to your purchases. Today, companies like Google Pay and Paytm would know where all you traveled because you would have used your Paytm for an Uber and you would have traveled to places. And they would know the level to which you would travel. These are data which requires a certain level of protection. Without a data protection law in India today, what we do is that there are certain things which are prohibited because a case was raised. And so many things on which no case came up, people assume it is not prohibited at all. There are so many violations of privacy on which no case would have come till date. And there is an assumption that these are all permitted violations. And I think as lawyers, it is our fundamental duty to point out that just because nobody has raised it and because there is a void period of time at this point of time with regard to data privacy law, these things are not permissible. Violations of privacy in various ways like this, some of, very tip of the iceberg only I have pointed out. These are not permissible. I think it's our duty as lawyers to take each and every violation of this sort to court and to have an active discussion on this violation and to settle the law insofar as this is concerned. Come the time, the data privacy law would come, data protection law would come into effect. Until then, I think we have to keep this exercise live of bringing up issues in the court and having an active discussion so that law is settled in this regard. I think Deepak sir would agree with me on that.
Sriram, we are trying to do that at least to help people. And think you people can conclude. We are our time is, we are on time now. Your punctuality. We are on punctual on.
Okay, I think Prerna, you can just conclude.
Good evening and hello everybody. I am Prerna from the SAT team. On behalf of the team of We Are SAT, I would like to thank our founder and mentor, Advocate Deepak Prakash, and Vinod sir, who has always been the guiding light behind all of our endeavors, Commander Prasanna for her words of inspiration, and all our panelists, Dr. Dhanya Menon, Dr. Manoj Kumar, Mr. Rakshit Tandon, and Dr. Jay Kumar, for providing us with an entirely new perspective of personal liability, personal responsibility when we talk about data cyber security. I would also like to thank Advocate Sriram for shedding light on a very important topic, that is how to get your grievance redressed in a court of law, or any legal redressal, how to get when your private space is violated on cyberspace. All of the speakers that we have seen today and heard today, all of these people have said one thing in common, and that is prevention is more important than trying to find a remedy. So unlike the physical crimes where we totally shun the possibility that it could have been the victim's mistake at all, it is very important to protect yourself and your information and information of your loved ones on cyberspace. Granted, there are things that we cannot control, like Sriram sir pointed out. If you order food and you pay via Paytm, Google knows, Paytm knows, and all of these people know what you're eating for 4 times a day. So these kind of violation of privacy can only be curtailed and curbed properly when a proper law is come in force. But other than that, every time you feel that there's an issue that is not right, it is generally not. And in order to get redressal for your grievances, you should always talk to somebody, ask somebody for help. Like Deepak sir pointed out, you can always go to your legal service authorities. They're present in every state, every district. You can file a cyber complaint. You can go to a court of law if your complaints are not being registered. And you can also, as always, We Are SAT is always there to provide you with legal help whenever you need it. Also, all of us here on this platform today want to thank every one of you, because most of you are law students. Others who are not law students are students nonetheless. All of you, remember, we are the generation that is going to make a change. Whenever something wrong has happened to, let's say, the older generation, they get tired fighting it out. But we should follow this quest for justice, not just to get our problems addressed, but also to make a change, which is why we should not stop fighting just because it's a tedious process, just because it's a long process. And with that thought, I would like to thank all of you. Thank you to Team SAT, our entire team, for working endlessly on this project, to make this happen. And thank you all for gracing the occasion.
I think we have Hemant sir between us from NGO Swan. So I would like to extend my thank you to Hemant sir, who is there and attended complete session. And thank you so much, sir. Hemant sir, are you there in the session?
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Kanika. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, MD. Thank you for being there. And Kanika, we have our DMCI Wayanad district coordinator, Dr. Rajesh is there. I think Rajesh is always with all our program. Dr. Rajesh, you are there. Just I'm checking participants. Rajesh is there. Dr. Rajesh, you are there.
Yes, sir.
Yes. He was here.
No, Rajesh, you are there.
Hello. I think he's busy with his. Can you unmute and say we can see you and we can finish top? Dr. Rajesh, are you hearing me? And a lot of people came and gone to T. Kuttappan. He was the SNDP Yogam officer from Delhi. He was there, and a lot of people were here, but we have not mentioned their name also. I think I'll inform them personally. I think we can conclude. Thanks for everybody for being here, especially for the young blood. All thanks to you people organizing and doing this thing, and especially for Sriram also in a short notice he's come and attended. Everybody, thanks for my side also. Thank you everybody. Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Bye. Take care. Stay safe. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.